Emily Carter never thought a single phone call could quietly turn her life upside down, but on that cold evening in Colorado, when the sky was already dark before dinner and the house felt too big for one person, the sound of her phone ringing carried a weight she did not yet understand. Her husband Mark had been deployed overseas for 7 months, and though they spoke when they could, the distance had stretched their conversations thin, filled with careful words and forced strength. Emily was used to silence now, the kind that settles into the walls and reminds you that waiting can feel lonelier than being alone. She had just finished washing dishes when she saw the unfamiliar number, almost letting it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. When she heard Daniel Reed's voice, her breath caught before she could stop it. Daniel was not just an old friend, he was the man she had loved before Mark, the man she once imagined a future with, back when life felt simpler and choices felt endless. His voice sounded older, tired, and unsure, stripped of the confidence she remembered. He did not waste time with small talk. He told her he was back in town after years away, that things had fallen apart for him, a breakup, a job lost, savings gone faster than he expected. He said he hated calling her, hated putting her in an awkward place, but he had no one else nearby. He asked if he could stay for a short while, just until he got back on his feet. He made sure to say the words as a friend, carefully and clearly, as if saying them enough times would make them safe. Emily stood frozen in her quiet kitchen, memories rushing in faster than she could sort them. She remembered late-night talks with Daniel from years ago, remembered how close they once were, remembered how their love ended not with anger but with timing that never lined up. She also thought of Mark, steady, loyal, far away, trusting her to hold their home together while he served. Emily felt torn between who she had been and who she promised to be. Loneliness has a way of making old connections feel comforting instead of dangerous, and in that moment, Emily told herself she was strong enough to handle it. She told herself compassion did not mean betrayal. She told herself that helping someone in need was not wrong. Without fully letting herself think it through, she agreed. When Daniel arrived the next day with a single suitcase and a tired smile, Emily noticed how strange it felt to see him standing on her porch, older but familiar, like a memory stepping into real life. He thanked her more than once, his voice soft with relief, promising it would only be temporary. Inside, the house seemed to change the moment he walked in, no longer quiet but unsettled, as if the walls remembered him too. Emily showed him the guest room, kept her distance, and reminded herself again that this was harmless. Over the next few days, life moved quickly. Daniel left early in the mornings to look for work, came back late, and tried not to take up space, but his presence filled the house anyway. They talked over coffee, sharing updates about life, carefully avoiding the deeper feelings that hovered between them. Emily told him about Mark's deployment, about waiting, about the strength it took to act okay every day. Daniel listened closely, sometimes too closely, and she caught herself talking more freely than she had in months. She missed being heard. Still, she set rules in her mind and followed them, convinced control was enough. What Emily did not know, what made her choices heavier than she realized, was that Mark's deployment had quietly changed. A mission ended early. Paperwork moved faster than expected. Mark was boarding a flight home without telling her yet, hoping to surprise his wife and finally step back into the life he had been missing. While Emily tried to manage her past and present under one roof, her future was already on its way back, carrying expectations, trust, and love that would soon collide with a decision she thought was temporary, simple, and safe. After Daniel settled in, the days began to move faster than Emily expected, each one blending into the next with a strange mix of comfort and tension that never fully relaxed. Mornings started quietly, with Daniel leaving early to search for work while Emily went through her routine, but the evenings slowly became longer and heavier. They shared simple dinners, talking about small things at first, news, traffic, the weather, yet those conversations naturally drifted toward the past and the people they used to be. Daniel spoke openly about his mistakes, about choosing the wrong paths and realizing too late what truly mattered, and though he never blamed anyone, Emily felt the weight of his regret pressing against her own memories. She tried to keep emotional distance, reminding herself that she was married, that Mark trusted her completely, but loneliness can blur lines even when no one steps over them. Daniel listened to her in ways that felt rare, noticing when she was tired or overwhelmed, offering quiet support without asking for anything in return. He fixed small things around the house, shoveled snow without being asked, and thanked her every day for letting him stay, which made her feel helpful but also uneasy. Phone calls with Mark grew shorter due to time zones and exhaustion, and Emily found herself wanting to talk more than she could during those brief moments. When she hung up, Daniel was often there, ready to listen, and she hated herself for feeling relieved by that. The house, once silent, now held shared laughter, late-night talks, and a sense of warmth that felt comforting but wrong at the same time. Emily noticed how Daniel remembered little details about her, like how she took her coffee or the songs she loved years ago, and she caught herself smiling before quickly pulling back. She set quiet boundaries: no late-night drinks, no personal touches, no conversations that went too deep, but emotions do not always respect rules. One evening, a winter storm cut the power, and they sat in the living room with candles, the soft light making the room feel smaller, closer. The silence between them was heavy, filled with things neither of them said. Emily felt the pull of old feelings rising, not because she wanted them, but because they were never fully gone. She stood up suddenly, her heart racing, and said this arrangement was becoming a mistake. Daniel did not argue or defend himself, he simply looked at her with understanding and quiet sadness, admitting that being there brought back feelings he had tried to bury. He promised he would leave soon, once he found work, and thanked her again for her kindness. That night, Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing that even without crossing a clear line, something fragile was already breaking. She thought about Mark, about the life they planned, and wondered how love could feel so strong and yet so distant at the same time. Across the ocean, without Emily knowing, Mark was packing his bags, his return approved early, his heart full of excitement to surprise his wife. While Emily struggled to hold her emotions in place, time moved forward without waiting, quietly setting the stage for a moment that would force truth into the open and leave no room for explanations that sounded reasonable only in silence. The morning everything collapsed began quietly, almost gently, with pale sunlight slipping through the windows as Emily moved through the kitchen on habit, unaware that her life was seconds away from changing. She was pouring coffee when she heard the front door open, a sound so familiar that it did not register as wrong until heavy boots touched the floor, slow and steady, carrying a presence she had missed and feared at the same time. She turned, and there stood Mark, thinner, tired, his uniform wrinkled from travel, his face marked by long months away, but his eyes clear and focused, locked on her with shock, hope, and confusion all at once. Emily froze, the mug shaking in her hand, her breath caught in her chest as joy and panic collided. Inside her. She opened her mouth to speak, but before a word came out, Mark's eyes moved past her shoulder toward the hallway, where Daniel stood still, his jacket half on, his face drained of color. The room seemed to tighten, the air thick and heavy, as if even the house was holding its breath. Mark did not raise his voice or step forward, he simply looked from Emily to Daniel, taking in every detail, the extra shoes by the door, the unfamiliar coat on the chair, the clear truth that no explanation could soften. "I come home early," Mark said slowly, his voice calm but edged with hurt, "and this is what I see." Emily rushed to explain, words spilling out too fast, telling him Daniel was only a friend, that he needed help, that nothing happened, that she never meant to hide anything, but her voice sounded weak even to her own ears. Mark listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable, the silence between her sentences louder than any argument. Daniel finally spoke, his tone respectful and low, admitting he had asked for help and that Emily had tried to do the right thing, but his honesty did nothing to ease the tension. Mark nodded once, as if confirming something painful he had already accepted, then looked at Emily with eyes full of disappointment rather than anger, which hurt her more than shouting ever could. He said he trusted her once without question, trusted their marriage, trusted the space between them, and now that trust felt shaken beyond words. He did not accuse her of betrayal, did not ask for details, because he said some truths did not need proof to leave scars. With steady calm, he told them both he could not live in a house filled with confusion and unanswered doubts. I need space, he said, and right now, that means you both need to leave. Emily felt the ground drop beneath her, disbelief rushing in as she begged him to slow down, to talk, to understand, but Mark's decision was firm, built on the exhaustion of distance and the pain of coming home to something he never imagined. Daniel accepted the words without protest, apologizing quietly before turning to pack his things, his presence suddenly small and unwanted. Emily moved through the house in a blur, grabbing clothes, her hands trembling as memories of laughter, waiting, and hope pressed against her chest. Mark stood by the door, not watching her pack, not stopping her, his silence louder than any goodbye. When Emily finally stepped outside with her suitcase, the cold air hit her face, sharp and real, and she realized she was standing on the porch of a home she no longer belonged to. Daniel placed his bag in his car without meeting her eyes, murmured another apology, and drove away, leaving Emily alone with the weight of everything she had misjudged. Mark did not follow her outside, the door closed softly behind her, ending a chapter without drama but full of finality. Emily stood there for a long moment, tears burning but not falling, understanding too late that even choices made with good intentions can break what matters most, and that some surprises do not bring joy, only the quiet sound of a life being pushed in a direction no one planned. Emily left Colorado the same day, her suitcase heavy and her heart even heavier, driving through long stretches of quiet highway toward her sister's home in Oregon, where she stayed in a small guest room that felt safe but unfamiliar. The days that followed moved quickly yet felt empty, filled with long walks, short conversations, and too much time to think. Daniel sent one brief message apologizing again before leaving town for good, and Emily did not reply, knowing there was nothing left to say. What remained was the space Mark once filled, now silent and unanswered. She replayed every moment in her mind, not to excuse herself but to understand where things shifted, realizing that even without clear wrongdoing, she had allowed emotional closeness to grow in a place that should have been protected. Weeks passed with no word from Mark, and the waiting felt different from before. He was no longer far away because of duty, but because of choice. Emily focused on small routines, helping her sister, applying for remote work, trying to rebuild stability while her marriage hung in uncertainty. One afternoon, a letter arrived with Mark's familiar handwriting, and her hand shook as she opened it, afraid and hopeful at the same time. His words were calm, honest, and deeply painful. He wrote about trust being fragile, about how distance already tests love, and how coming home to unexpected confusion had left him unsure of where he stood. He admitted he still loved her, but love alone could not erase doubt, and he needed time to decide whether their bond could survive what had happened. Emily read the letter more than once, feeling both relief and sorrow, understanding that forgiveness cannot be rushed and healing cannot be demanded. That evening, she sat outside as the sun dipped behind the trees, the sky changing color slowly, and accepted that some lessons arrive only after loss. She did not know if her marriage would recover or if this was the beginning of a different life entirely, but she knew she had grown from the pain, learning that loyalty is not only about actions, but about guarding emotional space when no one is watching. As night settled in, Emily held the letter close, breathing deeply, choosing patience over desperation, and hoping that whatever came next, whether reunion or release, would be built on honesty, clarity, and a deeper understanding of what it truly means to choose love every single day.